my name is Mary Matthews and I teach flute at Florida State University. I'm also one of the co-authors of Beatboxing and Beyond and Into the Beyond, two flute method books that explore all things extended techniques. And I want to thank the Flute New Music Consortium for asking me to do this performer's guide to Tim Hagen's solo flute work, Blowout. Whenever I start learning a new flute piece, especially one that has extended techniques in it, I usually go to the composer's performer's guide that's either in the front or the back of the score, where they talk a bit more about the extended techniques or the notation that they use in their piece. Sometimes it's in the form of a key where they show us the notation and specifically what they're going for or what fingerings they'd like us to use, or other times we'll have a written out description of each measure where they give us a sound model or a specific description of exactly what they want that extended technique to sound like. And because Tim Hagen is a phenomenal performer and flutist, in addition to being a composer, his guide is incredibly helpful. The first bar in the entire piece starts off with an extended technique. He tells us to start off with this low B with an airy quasi-shakuhachi flute sound. It's also marked sforzando and then followed up by a glissando that we want to create by slowly pulling our fingers off of the open hole of the flute. In attacking the low B with that sforzando and airy sound, I would use an articulation that's a little higher up on the hard palate where we're going. So then the next part of this practice, of course, would be the glissando, where we gradually slide our fingers back while keeping the keys depressed off of the open tone. Now when we move on to measures 6 to 9 and then again in 12 to 17, we start to see the use of beatboxing syllables. On here he notates ka and cha, but when we read his guide at the beginning, he does say that if you find a different syllable that you find exciting and that works for you, to go ahead and use that. So he's giving us a guide, but also a little bit of room to improvise and make the piece our own and explore a bit. So we have our. Once we're comfortable with the beatboxing syllables alone, we add the flute, but we do want to make sure when playing beatboxing syllables that we roll out the flute a little bit more so that our air is going over the tone hole rather than directly down into the tone hole. And we try our. Now when we jump ahead to measure 33, we see singing and playing at the same time used for the first time in this piece. If you're new to the technique, it's important to remember that our singing voice is not going to be the same as our singing voice when we're not singing and playing at the same time. Our singing voice when we're singing and playing at the same time is going to be growly, it's very high pressure in the vocal cords, and it's going to sound like this. And the reason that we get this sound is because we need to blow out at the same time, and we need to blow out enough highly pressurized air that it can make a note on the flute at the same time. In measure 36, we see two extended techniques paired for the first time in this piece, where we're executing two at the same time. Luckily, we've seen both of these extended techniques in the piece before, so we're going to be pairing our singing and playing at the same time that we're doing these glissando. In 38, we see the introduction of the lip pizzicato, and this is different from when we just see tongued pizzicato in our music. A tongued pizzicato is created with some pressure between the tongue and the hard palate, whereas a lip pizzicato is going to be created with a high pressure poo or popping sound of the lips. Afterward, we see the 3 R's, and this is another spot where we want to make sure that we've read his performance notes. He says that that should be a flutter tongue sound, and when we pair together the lip pits with the flutter tongue sound, this is where he says that we're supposed to be mimicking the sound of a drum set in 60s rock music. The last extended technique in this piece happens at the very end, and it's a jet whistle. So try keeping that tone hole facing upward, and then as you blow that rush of air, while your lips are fully covering and sealing the tone hole, we want to make sure that we're blowing across just like we normally would on our flute. I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you, and I really hope that you explore this piece and have fun with it. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and if you have any follow-up questions, you can always feel free to get in touch with me, marymatthewsflute@gmail.com.